I'm Coach Corey Wayne, and today I've got a special guest, Ed Latimore, who is a former heavyweight boxer. He's also, I believe, you got a master's in quantum mechanics, is it?
No, but that's really cool, man. Just a bachelor's degree in
Physics.
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 Yeah.
I was thinking quantum mechanics.
Well, we got to
Wrong
take
one.
quantum mechanics and physics, so it's not not too far off.
Cool. So Ed. What I like about Ed, I've been following him for a few years on Twitter and Instagram, and just listening to him talk. He's a really good writer, and he tends to write and think and talk like I do, and so it's one of the reasons why I jive with what I've seen from him so far. And so we got a bunch of different topics we're just gonna kind of go over, and he's gonna share some of his life story, which is pretty interesting, and we're gonna kind of talk about different topics of self-reliance, reaching your full potential. He's like me. He works, I believe, strictly totally online. You have online
Yep,
businesses.
completely online.
So tell us about yourself. Who is it? Who is Ed Latimore?
Oh man, every time someone asks me that question, I always worry that I'm going to miss something, and because there's I don't there's it's not so much that there's so much. It was just a lot of time. But we'll start at the beginning. I grew up as a typical at-risk youth, a stereotype, born to a single mother in public housing, and everything that comes with that, the violence and the I never felt safe at home either. But a lot of that changed. One day I ended up at a school where I went to high school. I completely crossed town in a very different socioeconomic background. And that really set the foundation. I met a lot of the friends I still have today, going to two of their weddings this summer, in fact. Set the foundation then. And then, I graduated and went to I tried the college thing. Wasn't really for me the first time I went. 18. I was enamored with the booze and the girls, and that's all I did and chased for 2.5 semesters before they said you gotta go. And so I went and wasn't doing much for a little while. There's some gray area, and then I started fighting at 22. I went to a boxing gym because I wasn't really doing anything. There's a great story behind how I ended up in a boxing gym. But in the recap, I ended up fighting at 22. And that was also around the time where I started drinking, and then I got really heavy into drinking and fighting. And it's really amazing, man. When you're burning the candle at both ends, when you have success in one area, people tend to excuse a lot of stuff. And so I got excused for a lot of the drinking, but I felt bad about it. Eventually, though, I decided to get sober. I called December 23rd, 2013, my second birthday. That was my first day of sobriety. And I also turned pro that year, so I had my pro debut, and then I went back to school. It was pretty much like, okay, we got to start rebuilding me from the ground up. And so a lot of the things that people know me for, the writing, the physics, the boxing at the professional level, the social media, all of that started in the year 2013, and really at the end, so we'll call it 2014. And all that gets built up, and that's what I've been up to ever since. I'd fought pro. I lost my first fight in 2016, this September 23rd, 2016, exactly. And that really paved the way for me to get into teaching. I taught kids for a little while, physics and math. I was a private tutor. Really great experience. Really, really showed me that I legitimately enjoy teaching. And now, I do some part-time coaching and things like that outside of everything being online. But that is very much not for money. Part-time coaching, there's no money in boxing at any level. So don't fight if you think you want to do it for money. But that more or less brings me to now, and then whatever questions and jump offs we have from there.
So what is it? What business are you in specifically? Because I think from my perspective, it seems like you've got several different things. You've got like a Twitter marketing type course where you have a course where you teach people how to grow their Twitter following, because you're closing in on 200,000.
Closing in, even dealing with all the craziness that is the Twitter algorithm and some of the things that go on, some above water, some not. Still trucking along. But I always say, man, like my business is I figured out how to get paid to be myself, and I'm really happy with that. Now I'm starting to think about making more money, but for the most part, I have private clients I work with on their writing. I have a group that I work with on their writing, and I'm always, promoting and moving my stuff, my course on writing, because to me, like Twitter is just a microcosm of good writing. Because if you write well, and when I say write well, I don't mean like the Queen's English or anything crazy like that. No, you want to write engagingly. You want to make sure that people care about what you're saying. They want to look at it. They want to read it. They want to share it. And so, and the techniques for doing that are genre independent. It doesn't matter. But if you know how to do it, you can infuse sales techniques. That's pretty much what they are, sales and marketing ideas in the writing. You can infuse it into something as plain as a document or a science report, or something as engaging as fiction, naturally, or at least creative as fiction. So that's more or less the main thing I work on with writing. The secondary thing that's really important to me is helping people deal with two levels or two types of addiction. One, guys who are dealing with drinking. That's the thing that's near and dear to me. And then also guys that are dealing with pornography addiction, because I understand that stuff is like really insidious and ruins a lot of relationships that it doesn't have to ruin. So I have a group where I work with guys on that as well.
And so these are like private coaching groups that you
private
have?
coaching groups. Yep. Because that's the best way. What I'm learning as I continue to get better at this is, you can make a decent amount of money with a course, especially with a following of my magnitude. You put it out there, you convert 1% of your following, and you're selling something for $200 or $150. That's most people. That's more than most people's yearly salary you can clear in a week. But in terms of follow through, like I read one time that like only 12% of people will like ever complete a course, right? In terms of follow through and impact and really making a difference, some things the format, even though the profitability is lower, the format leads it to a much higher completion rate and as a result, a much higher success rate. So I think if you're going to do something with like I have a little course on addiction, but I also run my private groups. And I think the groups are affordable enough. Certainly, like I don't look at the groups like, how can we make more money? But otherwise they could be a lot more. And I certainly think given my credentials, we could charge more, but it's about making the impact.
It's good, the greater cause.
Yeah, and that's how I've looked at the two levels of what I do. If I'm going to teach you a skill, so the skills that I feel well enough to go or feel good enough about, I'm going to go, we're going to pay me money and I'm going to guarantee you get a good outcome. Writing, social media growth, and SEO, specifically on-page SEO, I've put a lot of energy and money into learning those skills, and my following and website reflects that. And I guess email stuff too, right? But if I'm going to help you get your life right, we're talking about, dealing with bad habits, addiction, discipline, work ethic. Okay, let's see. Let's make it, because you got to get some skin in the game. So it's got to cost you something. But the price at that point is not so much about me getting paid as it is about you being committed. You're a lot more likely to be committed at $200 than you are at $50. But if I make it $1,000, well, can you even get in? And you really might need that. So that's the balancing act we're always working with.
So what
That's
exactly do you write about?
I write about anything and everything that comes to mind. This was that's a great question, because when we redid my website in 2020, we were trying to, this was my web designer's idea, and I was like, we got to do it this way. But he said we should try and break the site down into 3 categories. And I said, man, that's tough. So we tried to do that, and ultimately we ended up with 5. And then after I learned a little more about siloing content and how it should, reflect categorically what people are going to come into your site and most likely want to read next, then I said, just give me free range, reprogram it so I can create my own categories. Right now we have 11 categories on the site. Because whatever I'm interested in, I was very deliberate in naming the site edlatimore.com, not like dealwithporn.com or learningmath.com or workingout.com or something like that, because I want it to be a journey of me. So I'm trying to think, what do I have right now? I have a few articles about how to learn math, a few articles on improving your focus, a lot of articles actually on forgiveness, a lot of articles on dealing with sobriety, dealing with porn addiction, a few articles on working out, on dating, on leading in a relationship, because these are things that are important to me, and then if I get a new interest somewhere down the line, it's just a matter of creating a new category and siloing content there. But back to the idea, like right now, I'm really big on this kick because everyone does these book summaries and book quotes. And I was like, wow, what a great SEO idea, right? And then I went and looked at some, and this is when I realized that people are lazy. And I don't want to be lazy. I want to offer real good experiences. That I read The Art of War, right, by Sun Tzu, and I was like looking to see how many, what quotes did people grab versus the ones I grabbed out of my version. And there was some quote about friendship up there. Okay. Now, The Art of War is about the war, man. They don't talk about friendship in this book. We're talking about like enemies and plundering and killing folk, right? And so I started looking up. I was like, okay, let me look through my Kindle, because now you can just like type in on your Kindle and see what the word is. The quote is nowhere in the book. So, and it was on a bunch of people's like list of Sun Tzu quotes and Art of War quotes. And that's when I realized a lot of people are just copying what they see for SEO, takes or whatever. So what I want to do is like, I'm not putting the thing up unless I actually read the book, which is a lot slower, but it ranks a lot higher in the computer, in the search engine algorithm, because it's interesting to me. So that's like one of the interests now is like reading these books. I just finished The Prince, because I feel like everyone talks about Machiavelli. I'm like, let me actually read this book and make sure I know what I'm saying and doing. There's some cool insights in there. Now I'm rereading A Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, but this time I'm taking the notes in the Kindle, and now I know you can do this thing where you highlight it and then it goes, well, do you have anything you want to say? You take the notes and then you export it right out with a quote. So that's a little tangent, like where the current interest is, and like right now, what likely is coming next is I've gotten really interested in peptide health. So peptides are these I guess to be qualified as a peptide, you have to be less than 50 amino acid chains, and they do very specific things in the body. And it's really going to be the next, I think, not even the next. I mean, it's here. People just don't know about them because the doctors, they're very good at healing you. Reactive medicine. This is preventative, right? And there are a lot of things that it can be used to help heal with. But like, for example, right now, I shoot myself up with 15 cc's of Sermorelin, and Sermorelin is a growth hormone secretagogue, and it works by stimulating my pituitary gland to get my growth hormone levels back to where they were when I was like in my early 20s. And this is not like shooting up growth hormone, because that comes with a whole bunch of other problems where the cost severely exceeds the value. This works with my body, and the body, with its negative feedback mechanism, it will eventually go, okay, that's enough. And no matter how much you give us, we're not going to secrete anymore. But there's like BPC 157, you shoot that in different wounds and it causes them to heal. There's epithalon, which causes your telomeres to lengthen, which like reverses aging. The MOD-C, which works on your mitochondria and make them heal. So there's all this stuff I'm putting in my head, and I'm working on my vitamin D deficiency. Now this all sounds crazy, but what I'm doing is I take my blood work every 6 months, and I see what's wrong, and then I start to work on it so I can stay ahead. And so this whole area of preventive medicine, that's like the next thing I'll write about. So I'm always writing about what I find interesting and what I'm experiencing, because that'll give me the ability to give a really authentic perspective.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting with the preventive medicine, because why even get to the problem? It's kind of similar in boxing too, because that's how you really want to box. You want to be preventative instead of reacting to the other fighter. You want to prevent his.
You want to cause them to react as opposed to react. As I always say, you want to be the source of action. Take initiative. When you take initiative is like, in terms of attributes in a contest, initiative is probably the most important one. I think it's even more important in speed, and at least equal with position. Because when you move first, you dictate what happens next. Yeah. I mean, something that most people can think about without dealing with fighting. If we think about like dating, right? We're here on the Coy Wayne show. We talk about dating, right? If I go and I say something to the girl, then if I do this enough times, I get a pretty good data set of what the most likely response is. And then in that sense, I know what to say next. And it doesn't get you through every problem, but what it does do is it gives you a head start on what could be a problem. It eliminates areas where you're weak. And then, like in chess, that's kind of all that happens. I play enough chess games. Like I don't have to think about the first 10 moves because I kind of know no matter what you do, at least as white, what the most likely responses are. And same with black too, right? And then when something deviates from that, I got to stop and think. Now I have to use brain power, and that's time, and that slows me down. But I should be able to think through it. But on the off chance I can't, right? That sucks. But this is what we want to do in everything in life. We want to get as much initiative, because when you have initiative, you know what's coming next. And health is no different.
Yeah. It's like getting in the uncharted territory and charting it instead of getting like...
like, what did the nerds say, man? Like, it's like the fog of war, right? The fog of war and real-time strategy games. You don't know what's in the part of the map you haven't explored yet. But once you explore it, then you can build up a strategy. Now you still want to have a good strategy to deal with a problem when it comes
like
up.
A build order, essentially.
Yeah.
A great scaffolding for a building.
Mm-hmm. That's another good way to look at it. But I think when it comes to our health, I think a lot of people, they wait to find out a problem because that's how we think. We go to the hospital when we're sick. I don't ever want to have to go to the hospital. That's the perspective I'm taking. And I know because right now we have this incredible privatization of things. You can go and get your whole blood panel done. And if you do a little research, because now we live in this age where knowledge is decentralized, you can get on the internet and find out what something means. You can find a bunch of perspectives, do your own research. It takes a little work, energy, and a little bit of money, but you can come up with and learn just as well what something means as you would if you went to your physician after the problem starts. Okay? So if you do your blood work every 6 months, you can see something before it starts to manifest itself as a big issue. I'll give you a perfect example. I get my blood work done every 6 months, and my A1C was creeping up. A1C is a measure of like your blood sugar. My hemoglobin A1C started at 5.2, and then I went and it was 5.7. And my resting glucose, or fasting glucose, was at 92 and 94. This is 6 months apart. So even though I look in shape, my body internally, for whatever reason, is looking like a pre-diabetic and is moving closer to being full-blown pre-diabetic, which is, now I've got a problem. So now I can get ahead of that. I can make changes in my diet. You can go get the drugs yourself now. I'm not telling you what to do and not do, but if you know who to talk to and you've done your research, you can get stuff. And you don't even have to do that because there are clinics that now specialize in this because there are enough people who are really interested in the idea of preventative health. And so you can go, once you know what's wrong, you can get ahead of it because I know I've done something very wrong. Short of me, when I get out here and drive back to Miami, getting in a car crash, short of like an acute issue like that, I should never have to see the inside of a hospital,
Yeah.
And how did you get into all that? What was the impetus?
So funnily enough, I started with the whole Nootropics gang. I was like, okay, how can I think better? Like, you remember that movie Limitless? With Bradley Cooper, and he takes that pill and he gets smart and he learns everything, and then becomes like a million overnight. Like, okay, so that was inspired. That concept was inspired by the whole modafinil, right? They're like, oh, okay, it's this pill that makes you now it doesn't do that, but it does allow you to focus more, allows you to absorb more, allows you to process things more easily. And you start going down that rabbit hole and you learn there's a whole host of drugs that are developed, a lot of them by the Russians, because they're a little less ethical than we are when it comes to this stuff. So they can create a lot of cool stuff. And you start learning there's a whole science of nootropics. Like I was talking earlier about my balance from fighting. My balance is not where it was. And I'm trying to get that back. And so I'm looking at, okay, how do we deal with this? Well, we don't know a lot about concussions. This is my hypothesis right now. But I get to test it with drugs we do have. One called Dihexa and another called Cimax, which are both nootropic peptides. The one increases like brain-derived neurofactor. And the other is, I can't remember the word, but it restores free radical damage or that was caused. And so I'm like, okay, let me try these out and see if they're going to help me improve my balance because I know like right now I have that cognitive issue. and we'll see what happens. Worst case scenario, I get smarter. Absolute worst case. But this is how I want to think about my health. Forget trying to get back from a chronic health issue. Let's hold a baseline of health and then try to enhance. Let's get further along. Because you have to think, all right, life is like you want to live as long as you can, but you want to live as long as you can.
Want to live well.
You don't want to just be like alive,
exist.
I want to move. Like I went on like this, it's called Uncruise, which is like, it's like 50 people on a ship up in Alaska, and they go into all the uncharted areas. Like we don't call it major ports. You just drop anchor and they take a skiff out to land and you go and explore stuff, or you go, I got pictures of me like picking up ice out of the water because I'm that close to the glacier. It's really cool. There was a guy on that ship that was like 75. He was out there moving like the rest of us. But there was a guy on the ship that was also 50. He was a little overweight. He was not moving like the rest of us. The difference, the guy who was older, he took care and maintained his health. And I'm like, that's what I want to be. I want to be here as long as I can, because you can't do everything, but you can do a lot. And you have to build relationships, and you have a long, happy life with people, leave good memories, but only if you're healthy. I don't want to be that person that is like in and out of the hospital.
For sure. That, at my age, 52, I've seen a lot of friends die. A lot of people got health problems. Guys I went to school with, they're extremely overweight or obese, and
here's something.
It's like taking care of people's body is like the last thing on most average people's
something crazy. So both of my parents are deceased. My father died when I was 18, and my mom, we just put her in the ground in December. Stark different. Neither of them made it to 60. Now, what killed my dad, when he was a child, he got strep throat. But it wasn't treated, so it turned into a complication of the heart when it turns into that, I think, scarlet fever. And so he got a heart transplant when I was like 9 or 10. And there's like this condition, I always forget the name, but whenever you have a heart transplant, if you make it 10 years after, the odds of it failing go to like 1%. But until then, it's like 50-50. And he made it 8 years and boom. My mom on the other, now he was 45. My mom on the other hand made it, she actually turned 59 in the hospital. But her health was absolutely terrible. I was on my mom for so many years. I said, look, she went in the hospital at 300 pounds and smoked and drank and was eating nonsense. And I said, this is going to kill you. We used to have these arguments all the time about this. Until finally one day I remember I said, because I'm not going to let this cause stress in my life. I said to her, look, this is probably 2013, 2014. I said, look, as long as you got health insurance, like life insurance, because I don't want to have to deal with that anger, because I'm already going to be angry. Do what you want. We're going to enjoy the rest of our life together, but I'm not going to have this argument with you every time I see you smoking or drinking something poor or bad for you, even though you're on dialysis or smoking. COPD complications ultimately will put her away. And I think about this all the time because completely avoidable, but how different from the average person was her lifestyle? Really, not much at all.
As Jim Rohn used to say, I should say, most people major in minor things.
Yeah, which is like another thing about my philosophy of health. I only aim for the people go, what is your routine? And what do you eat? And like, here are the big ones, man. Look, don't drink any calories. If you avoid refined carbohydrates, shop along the outside of the grocery store. You do those 3 things, those are the major, you've eliminated the source of many problems. And I guess I should include like, don't smoke, but I never smoked before, so it's not a thought. But yeah, smoking it comes with a host of things that are going to, there's no net benefit to smoking unless you got to like really lose some weight. I mean, maybe, right?
Cool.